God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 3 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 2 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBob here in Northern California, sporting a brand new Minnesota Viking hat today. I told Hoyseth a little earlier I was going to wear it backwards. He's like, no, you got to wear it forward and wear it proud. But there might be a time during today's broadcast, Brad, that you see a shift from the front to backside of the hat. Mr. Hoyseth, we are, just so everybody knows, recording this on Friday afternoon. Spoiler alert, the Kansas City Chiefs took down the Chargers as I anticipated in a 3-point victory. Mr. Hoyseth, what do you want to cover from last week, my friend?
Well, look, we thought it was going to be sloppy. The morning games on Sunday were just the first half was horrific. I mean, I kept seeing I was watching the NFL Red Zone channel, and every game was like 0-3, 6-0. We were approaching halftime, and I think we only had one team in double digits. It was something that you and I have talked about for years now, these early season games with the starters not playing the preseason, really a lot of sloppy football. There was a lot of great finishes, no doubt about that. Your Vikings, I see you got yourself a new hat there. All the excitement in a land of 10,000 lakes. My take on that is, maybe not quite so fast on that. I'm not sure it's a function so much of the Vikings being great as it was the Packers being absolutely horrific in that game. When you look at what the Vikings did, they didn't run the ball very well. They never got the ball to the tight ends. They look kind of like a one-trick pony to me. You get the ball to Justin Jefferson, and you're going to get some big plays. Outside of that, I didn't really see a lot. Defense looked pretty good. Green Bay, though, looked very woeful offensively. A lot of new players there, and at some point it's going to hurt the Packers. Not playing Aaron Rodgers during the preseason didn't hurt them last year. Remember they had that horrible week 1 game against the Saints where they got trounced, and then they came back and fought back and won the division. But I don't know. This year it looks like a different animal. I'm not sure the Packers have got the weapons there to get it done.
Yeah, I don't know that they. I mean, they definitely don't have the wide receivers at this point, and obviously Aaron Rodgers has. By the way, rightfully so, very little confidence in those young kids. A lot of times you see like young wide receivers enter the National Football League, and they take the league by storm. And but the reality is, there aren't a lot of Justin Jeffersons out there, and it usually takes these wide receivers a season or two to really sort of understand the defenses that they're going up against, so that they make the correct calls. And I sort of get the sense that Aaron Rodgers just doesn't have any patience for any of this at all. He wants guys that know what they're doing. And the problem with that is the two veteran wide receivers that the Packers have on the roster, Sammy Watkins, he's talk about one trick ponies. He runs like a route, and that's all he can do. So there's some trouble there on the Viking side of the ball. I saw some really interesting good things on the offensive side, but I'm with you. It did feel much like a one-trick pony, and I still say Dalvin Cook is just such a weak running back. On the defensive side of the ball, very interesting. Definitely gave Aaron Rodgers a curveball. I think the first half of the season could be really good for the Vikes on defense. It's just a question of, how teams adjust to this new defense down the road. And I think that will be interesting. All right, Mr. Hoysef, I think we should get into week number 2 of your National Football League picks. It is our top 10 games worth actually spending some money on this week. Brad, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, first one is Bengals at Cowboys, 2 teams that did not look very good last week at all. A lot of red flags. Obviously, the Cowboys now hurting without Dak Prescott. I'm playing the over-under in this one, which is at 41.5. I get a sense that the Bengals just didn't look very good. I got a sense that the Cowboys are fairly underwhelming offensively. But I'm going to go the over in this one. I feel like the Bengals at any moment could score 35 points. Even though the Cowboys do make some plays defensively, they take a lot of chances. They gave up a lot of big plays last year. So I'm going to take the over. 41.5 I thought was fairly low for these 2 squads. Even though the Cowboys have got a new quarterback, they're getting a guy that's played a little bit of football. They still got a decent running game. And I think they're going to have to open it up a little bit because I do believe the Bengals are going to score some points. So 41.5 seemed like a low number. I'm going with the over.
I have to say, I was like so happy you went with the over on this because that's exactly where I sort of saw this. And you don't know. I mean, Cooper Rush could just turn into something absolute. Okay, that's not going to happen. And I didn't mention this. So this is an easy game for me. I agree. I think Burrow gets back on track. The Bengals offense should put up some serious points. And just by mistake, the Cowboys are probably going to, score between 14 and 20 points in this game. So the over feels pretty easy to me. You're probably shaking your head when I said 20. But I do like that. But one thing I forgot to mention, and that was last week Brad took an early lead in this year's Gods of Odds. I'm not going to reveal how many games I got right or wrong, just to say that Brad got significantly more. I went back and I looked at last year's week 1 as well. Same thing happened, Brad. You completely destroyed me in week 1, as you did in this week also. One lesson learned for me is that is to not take any advice on picks from Nathaniel Hackett going forward. All right, Brad. My first game of the week is Buccaneers at the Saints. The Bucks are favored by 3 in this particular game. There's something about Tom Brady if you just take you take the 2 starting quarterbacks just for a second. And you got Jameis Winston and Tom Brady. And I know the Saints have been the kryptonite to Tom Brady over the last couple of years, but I look at this game, Fournette actually looked as good as Fournette has ever looked in a National Football League uniform last week. The defense seemed to be playing pretty good last week as well. Though it was against just a really bad Dallas Cowboy offense. That being said, the Saints struggled against a poorer team. I have no faith, none right now, in Dennis Allen at all as a head coach in the National Football League. And I look at this, and I'm going to go ahead and take the Bucs in this game.
I'm going to go in the other direction. I think we're going to probably disagree on a lot of games this week. The Buccaneers have got a personnel problem. I mean, Godwin's dinged up. Julio Jones has not practiced all week. And they no longer have, Rob Gronkowski. It's not a great offensive team anymore. They scored 19 points on the Cowboys. And really, it was they made it look tough. I mean, they really only had one touchdown and a bunch of field goals and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Saints. I said it last week. They were one of my dark horses to potentially get to the Super Bowl. I think it's a good lineup with a lot of talent on offense. They still got a lot of talent on defense. I'm not entirely sold on the coaching staff, but if you're going to give me 3 points at home against the Buccaneers team that is, I would say inadequate right now offensively without some of their big stars, I'm going to take the Saints. So at home, early game, I say Saints. I think Saints win it outright.
This is when I'm like, for all those people that are throwing money down on this game, obviously do it wisely and good luck. This is one of those things that it's just watching Julio Jones play wide receiver last week was so difficult. Like he made some great catches and all that stuff, but I mean, he was like, when he dove, I wondered if he was going to get back up. It was like that Clapper commercial. I've fallen and I can't get back up. He just looks so old out there, and I can't agree more with you when it comes to sort of Tampa potentially not having as many weapons, obviously, as they had in previous years. It's just I have no faith at all in Dennis Allen and the rest of that coaching staff. And this is, Tom Brady is most likely playing in his last year. This is like a big thing for him to go in and beat the Saints. And this is like, Tom Brady's, at home right now going, nobody likes me. Nobody trusts me. Nobody thinks I can do anything. And, he's playing up the whole, woe is me card to get himself motivated for this one. Tampa's going to win this game, Brad. You're just wrong.
All right, my next game, I'm going with two teams again that looked terrible last week, and that is the Cardinals at the Raiders. Raiders are a 5.5 point favorite in that game. Started at 2.5, went up to 5.5, which I thought was a massive jump. At 2.5, I probably would have sat on the sidelines and watched that thing. But at 5.5, I'm going to take the Cardinals, just because I still think the Raiders are the Raiders. Devontae Adams, at least last week anyways, didn't look like a huge difference maker to me. They focused on him for a while, and then they forgot about everybody else. At some point, Derek Carr, they're going to have to figure out that he's just not a guy that's going to win big games. And I like Derek Carr. I think he's a good person. But I'm not sure he's a great NFL quarterback. I'm not sure he's a guy that wins big games. This is suddenly a big game for both these teams. And so the Cardinals were a little embarrassed about what happened last weekend. I like 5.5. You're going to give me 5.5 going into Vegas. I'm going to take that. So I'm going with the Cards.
Yeah, I saw that it was 2.5 earlier in the week, and I had this penciled as a absolutely go Raiders if you could get it at 2.5. And then when it started to sort of go up a little bit, sort of unlike the stock market, which has been crashing, I looked at that 5.5 and I'm like, it just really, because you've got a really a lot of extremely valid points there. I think like the Raiders shouldn't have even been like that game against the Chargers last week was ridiculous how close it actually was. And because the Raiders really got beat up, and the fact that they even had a chance, towards the end of the game should say more about the Charger organization than anything.
Hey, I'm going to say this really quickly about the Chargers because neither one of us picked that game last night because obviously it was yesterday.
Yeah.
At some point, the Chargers got to look at a new coach. I'm sorry, this kid's just not making it for me. He makes way too many games close that shouldn't be close. There's a ton of talent there. They looked horrific last night. We saw all the chances he took last year. Remember all the fourth down chances he took in his own end and got burned and lost a couple of games as a result. At some point, they got to put away the young kid mentality and the Instagram message that they're sending everybody. You got to start winning football games. Otherwise, you're not going to be around very long as a coach. I think that team is loaded with talent. I just think they underwhelmingly perform almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah, in certain aspects of that game, I agree. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw the play in the first half, Brad, but it was a handoff to a running back that ran to the left side of the field.
Got stuffed by Jones. Yes.
Yeah, and then they had like this other play where it was like they gave it to a running back. He ran to the left, and then he turned around and threw the ball back to another running back on the right side of the field. And it was like they were just two baseball players playing catch in the outfield. And it was like ridiculous. It's like, you should be going north south, not east west. Chargers. Just there are all sorts of comments I can make about yesterday's game. One thing I do want to say is just a quick shout out to Amazon and Prime Video for a second. Unfortunately, Brad, I didn't get to watch the game live. So it was I taped it on Amazon Prime and just the fast forwarding function, like for football. They need to put in some thought in how to improve fast forwarding through commercials, because I can do that seamlessly on another provider, which should remain nameless at this point. Like, they got to fix that for me. Anyways, on this Raider game, I'm actually going in the opposite direction. I'm taking the Raiders. I'm just going to roll the dice. It's Vegas. Josh McDaniels' first game at home.
Oh, little Vegas reference. You're going to roll the dice, huh? Is that
rolling the dice?
Is that what that was?
And I believe in Derek Carr more than a lot of other people do. And I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. I think he's better than the kid they have sitting in classes twice a week in Kyler Murray. I just I prefer this Raider team. I like the offensive side of the ball better. DeAndre Hopkins is still serving his I didn't do steroids suspension. I'm going with the Raiders. They're going to get Josh Jacobs going as well.
Well, they got enough weapons there. There's no doubt about that. They should be good, but Kyler Murray has that X factor. I don't see any X factors for Derek Carr. Kyler Murray can just go 70 yards in a heartbeat, and you go, "Wow, that was special." We've seen Derek Carr for how many years now? I just don't see anything special. And
the end is near for Cliff Kingsbury and his beautiful house in Phoenix.
That I agree with too.
I think that's a big part of this. All right, Dolphins at Ravens. The mad genius that is the Dolphins head coach is going up against really one of the best rosters in all three phases of the ball in the Baltimore Ravens, minus the wide receiver core. But it's a fantastic defense. Special teams is really good. Running backs are coming back from injuries here in the next couple weeks. And what I think of Lamar Jackson. I think so highly of Lamar Jackson that I actually picked him on my fantasy football team this year. And Brad, you'll like this. Derek Carr is my backup. And of course, a bunch of the other usual suspects.
By the way, he would be a great backup.
Maybe I'm making your point on this entirely. So anyways, the Ravens in this game are favored. We got the Ravens favored by 3.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the Ravens at home. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a huge day in Baltimore, and that is how I see this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other direction. I originally had the Ravens. I've changed that. I'm going the Dolphins now. 3.5 is a little rich for me. Ravens hardly ever seem to win by more than 3.5. So, I mean, I think the Dolphins are one of the better young teams in the league. I think they're going to prove that out over the first half of the schedule. What did the Dolphins do last weekend? Let's see. The Dolphins went to 1-0. That's right. They outscored their opponent 20-7. And so they got a good defense. They've had a good defense for a number of years. You finally put some tools around Tua. I still think that the Ravens are a gimmicky offense. I don't like gimmicks. I like the real thing. And the real thing is when you got a bunch of tools around you, and you don't have a quarterback running for his life every down. So I'm gonna take the Dolphins and the 3.5 points.
I love that line, Brad. Tools around Tua. It's like a new Twitter handle. Yeah, I disagree. I mean, I like this Dolphins team a lot. But when you actually really look at what Tua did in the first game last week, they're sort of more of the same. And they didn't really get Tyreek Hill really going last week.
They did in the first half. They kind of got away from it.
Yeah.
But I like what they've got in Chase Edmonds as a running back. I don't think they had all of the options last year that they have this year. And so I wouldn't be surprised with the Dolphins if you see a new star every week. And there's a lot of guys there. Tua is a proven winner from his days in college. He improved last year. I think this is a breakout year for him. I think the Dolphins are a team that's going to be a contender at the end of the year.
Man, have I flip-flopped on Tua over the years. And I'm not ready, Brad, to flip back to your side of the fence. I might have a different opinion about this game, Hoysef, seriously. If Ryan Fitzpatrick came out of retirement and was a starting quarterback in this game, you guys got a lot of heart and charisma. Look, I like to I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think the Ravens are going to pull this one off.
All right, next one I went with two teams that almost nobody has any interest in whatsoever. And last week didn't help at all. It's the Colts and the Jaguars. And the Colts are favored by 4. They were one of the big disappointments, I thought, last week. I mean, I didn't think they looked very good. Ended up tying the Texans. I mean, talk about a snooze fest. That was like watching paint dry, that game. And so the Jaguars, they played gamely last weekend. Lost 28-22. Don't have much defense, but they do. I think they do have the ability to score some points. I think you're going to see a lot of improvement in year 2 from that quarterback. I looked at this and I saw the over/under at, or I saw the -4. The Colts are giving up 4, and I just like the Jaguars at home getting 4. Colts didn't show me anything. Not a big fan of their quarterback situation there. Jonathan Taylor in year 2, I think people are going to stack the box and stop him and make the quarterback beat him. And so I like the Jags at home getting 4 points in week 2.
Yeah, a little steep. I'm going with the Colts. I believe in old men sometimes, Brad, and that's really what you got here. I know how much you love Matt Ryan. Didn't you have like a poster of Matt Ryan hanging in your garage?
Never.
That wasn't you. Okay, sorry. Sorry.
No, I am not a Matt Ryan guy. Never have been. I think it's a wrong era for him to be playing football.
Yeah, it really might be. He would have been great in like the early 80s, huh?
I was thinking more like 1962. He might have been good. That was 50 years ago. So
I don't think
60 years ago.
62, did they?
Right.
Only on farms.
Right.
Anyways, and at strip malls in the South.
Right.
So I John, I agree. Like people are going to figure out how to slow down the Jonathan Taylor role. That makes a lot of sense to me. Matt Ryan and the offense looked a little sluggish. I think this is a good defense still in Indianapolis. For me, this is less about Indianapolis, and this is more about Trevor, aka Joey Lawrence, actually looking like a true professional quarterback in the National Football League. I would tell Trevor that if this thing doesn't work out for him here, which I don't think it's going to do, I see nothing but Sam Darnold, and I'm calling it now in week 2 of year 2 of Trevor's career. I just don't see it. It's not the arm, it's the decision making. It's the way he's still struggling to read defenses, still struggling to make adjustments.
Yeah, you got to have some talent around the kid, though. I mean, really, honestly, last year he had nothing. Etienne got hurt before the season started last year.
Yeah.
He's back now. I just think that year 2's got to be a little bit better than year 1. Obviously, though, I agree with you. This is a big year for him. If he doesn't produce this year, then all of a sudden he goes on that that list of guys that was a disappointment.
Well, he starts getting calls from The Rock about defecting to the NFL supported XFL. I just don't see it. So I'm going with the Colts. And I hope I'm wrong about Trevor Lawrence. But I'm just like, it's the same thing with preseason, Brad. Like, I don't know why he didn't play almost, at least every half of every preseason game for that team. Like, those starters for that Jacksonville Jaguar team needed to be out there during preseason. We might not see the real Jacksonville Jaguars for another 3 or 4 weeks. It's a bad decision. The way Sean McVay's running things is not right for everybody.
All right. Well, we're going to disagree on that one, and but there's one thing I do know about that game: almost nobody's going to watch it. So, I mean, there's zero interest in watching the Colts of the Jags, right?
That's the ratings in the tank game. All right. Speaking of nationally, games people are going to watch, Brad. I've got the Bears at the Packers next for you. The Packers are a 10-point favorite. The over or under, at least at last check, I had it at 43. I think, Aaron Rodgers figures at least a couple more things out. I expect them to score over 20 points in this game. I'm going to stick with, I'm sluggish on this, but I'm going to stick with the over. Just because the Chicago Bears defense is nowhere near as good as the Minnesota Viking defense is, from the first week of the season. And shutting down Justin Fields is an easier task than trying to shut down one of your favorite quarterbacks in the league, Kirk Cousins. So I'm going with the over.
Yeah, I'm going to go under. I think you and I are going to disagree on just about every one of your picks this year or this week.
You're foreshadowing.
I saw
the rest of the year.
I saw a Packer team that didn't look very good offensively. I saw a Bears team that won, but I wouldn't call what they did offensively great. I mean, I saw a stat this week that Justin Fields is going for his first game in history where he's thrown 2 touchdown passes in more than one game in a row this week. I mean, the Packers still, I think, showed that they have some defense last week. They just gave up a couple of big plays to Jefferson, but they still can play some defense. They're favored by 10 in the game, which means that the Vegas odds makers see the Packers, scoring somewhere around 26 points or something and holding the Bears to 17 or something like that. And so I'm going to go the under here. I see a defensive struggle. The Packers might get a little bit going offensively, but I see a closer battle than a 10-point spread. And I know 43 is not a huge number, but I saw 2 offenses that didn't impress me last week, and I don't think they're going to figure things out in 6 days. So I'm going to go the under at 43.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody can figure it out in 6 days, it's Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. They'll right their ship this week.
All right, I'm going to go to another game that probably regionally is not going to get a lot of interest from a lot of people. And that's the Jets at the Browns. And the over-under is at 39.5. It started at 42. I thought that was a huge leap backwards in terms of over-under. I think the Jets had a bad week last week. I think they're an improving young team. I like some of their personnel, although they're still a long ways away from being competitive. The Browns have still got a lot of talent there, and I know that they've got a lot of issues. There's no question about it. But both these teams do. But I saw that line drop 2.5 points. I thought that was a little bit much. That's a really low line, 39.5. To not be able to score 40 points and over under in an NFL game is really rare, especially for two teams that aren't great defensively. I mean, they're okay. So to me, it's more about poor football teams than it is about offensive production in this one. So I'm going to take the over at 39.5. Roll the dice on that one.
Yeah, I like the over in this one as well. All really, good reasons. I think the Browns are, their defense is strong enough. They know who they are on the offensive side of the ball. They're a running team. That's who they are. Run first, pass second right now. Don't blame them. Considering, who's leading them at quarterback. Amari Cooper's stats are sure going to go down while he's in Cleveland. That's a guarantee. But yeah, when you look at this game, I don't know about the part about the Jets improving. That will have to be because I feel like we're going to be having this a similar conversation towards the end of the year about regime change in New York that we were having about the Giants last year. So I'm just not totally sold. I know on paper the Jets did a really nice job with their draft the last couple of years, and just not sold. So, but 39.5 is not a big number. So I'm with you. I'm going with the over in this one.
Yeah, to me, I look at it like I think the Browns are going to score 25.
Yeah.
And the question is can the Jets score a couple touchdowns? Joe Flacco, I don't know what they were thinking. Joe Flacco threw the ball 59 times last week. That's an enormous amount of passes for a guy that age. I'm surprised he has an arm left, And so completed 37 of them. And, they do have some guys there. Corey Davis is a nice looking player. Elijah Moore had a nice season last year as a rookie. They got a young unit of running backs, and Michael Carter, Breece Hall's a rookie. So they do have some guys there. I think once they get their quarterback back, they'll be fine. But, they only scored 9 points last week, 3 field goals. They just got to find a way to get in the end zone. If they can do that a couple times, I see this thing going much past 39.5.
Yeah, one of my favorite sort of lines last week was in one of the post-game press conferences or post-game TV shows. I don't know which one it was, but one of the announcers basically said, was that Joe Flacco's son out there that threw 59 passes? I mean, is Joe Flacco still in the league?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. All right, moving on. So we have 2 Monday Night Football games, Brad. Apparently, the National Football League was afraid of the Emmys last week. They usually do their 2 Monday night games week 1 of the NFL season, and this year around the powerhouse that is Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live was hosting the Emmys. Yeah, so maybe they thought there was going to be a slap part 2 that happened there. So the NFL decided to mix up his schedule. All right, Titans at Bills. I'm playing the over on this. The over under is 49.5. That's a big big number. Josh Allen, this Buffalo Bills offense, the Tennessee Titans defense sort of not being up to speed quite yet. I think this is a game where the Bills are probably going to score between 35 and 40 points in this game, and that's one of the key reasons I've got the over in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go under, actually. Yeah, it was a tough line. I ordinarily probably wouldn't have chosen this one as an over-under. Anything can happen here.
Yeah. Titans
were one of the more disappointing teams last week. I mean,
I like having my nationally televised games in our picks.
Right. I thought the Titans were, one of the more disappointing teams last week. You lose to the Giants. I mean, at home. That's not very good football right there. They look like a team that has taken some steps backwards, losing the number one wide receiver last year. Derrick Henry, the running lanes weren't quite there last week that I could see against the Giants. The Giants are pretty good against the run. But ultimately, Tennessee wants to run the football, which tends to lower the score of the game. And I think they will be able to run it a little bit this week. And so I expect a little bit better performance there. And I think everybody's pretty hot on the Bills after last week. That's the sweet pick now everybody wants to take. I had Josh Allen on my football team last year, fantasy football. And surprisingly, he was a little disappointing because he rarely put two back-to-back games together. 49.5 seemed like a lot. I'm going to go the under in this one, but admittedly, probably not a game I would have picked.
Yeah. Hey, Mike Vrabel. At least the Denver Broncos went for a 64-yard field goal and missed it. I mean, what did they miss last week, Brad? It was 47-yard field goal attempt.
Was that game that just had like field goal after field goal missed? There was some bad games in terms of kicking last week. I can't remember.
I mean, the Titans could have easily beat the Giants last week, and we would have never experienced Brian Daboll dancing in the locker room after week one of the National Football League.
No, I think it was the Steelers and the Bengals, which had they had a ton of missed field goals, and then
missed field goals in that game for sure. So,
kicking was an issue for me last week. I had Harrison Butker on my fantasy both my fantasy teams, and he got hurt kicking off last week in like the first quarter. I was like, Are you kidding me? You have to be kidding. He rolled his ankle. He came back later and actually kicked a 54-yarder, which just tells you how talented that kid is. But he looks like he's not going to be playing this week for the Chiefs because he's got a bad ankle. But there was a lot of kicking woes last week, so hopefully that doesn't keep. We expect that out of our Vikings, right? But suddenly they've got kicking now. The Vikings. I don't know.
We like to draft kickers high and then give up on them too soon and then send them to the Raiders.
All right, my last game is the Falcons at the Rams. The Rams are a -10 in this game. Started at 13. I think we see a bounce back week from the Rams. I think we see a bounce back week for the Falcons the other direction, because the Falcons looked okay last week. And I think the Falcons go back to being the Falcons. I think the Rams go back to being the Rams. At home, they were embarrassed last week. Thing dropped from 13 to 10. I think it was all predicated on what we saw last week. I say the Rams bounce back in a big way, and they blow out the Falcons. To me, this is one of the easier picks of the week.
I want to say, hey, I think this Rams team's in real trouble this year, and they're going to fall completely back to earth and might not even make the playoffs based on a complete series of overreactions from week one of the season. So I'm not going to do that. And at the same time, I believe in the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff, and I think it's a good coaching staff, and I could see the Falcons keeping this thing a little closer than you think, Brad. So this has been one of those games where I've thought about swaying and going in the other direction. But I'm just going to go ahead and keep it with the Rams. I don't want to fall too far behind you early in the season at our Gods of Odds Gods of Odds picks, but wouldn't really surprise me to see Atlanta play better than you think.
Well, they looked good for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Remember, they were up. They lost by 1 point to the Saints. Let's not forget they were up 23-10 or something. Yeah. Heading into the fourth quarter, I mean, it looked like they were going to pull off a stunner against the Saints. And then they just, gave up some big plays to, Taysom Hill and, those guys out there in New Orleans. Michael Thomas had a couple touchdowns down the stretch.
What I'm really curious about, Brad, and then we got to get into our last game. Do you think at SoFi Stadium this week, there's going to be more Falcon fans there?
No, there's not a huge Atlanta fan base in Southern California. Now, if it was Vegas, it'd be one thing. If it was the Chiefs have got a great fan base out here. The Vikings have a great fan base out here. Cowboys are everywhere. Yeah. I just don't know that the Falcons have a fan base that travels that well.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the last game of the week. Also the second and the later of the 2 Monday Night Football games.
And by the way, Dave, the Rams won the Super Bowl last year, so they might have an okay fan base this year, or at least for 12 months, right?
Brad, whose house is it? All right, so I got the Vikes at the Eagles in this game. The Eagles are favored by 1.5. The Eagles are the team that I picked coming out of the NFC to represent the entire conference in the Super Bowl. So this was my long shot pick this year. A couple of years ago, it was the Cowboys, and we tend to not talk about that too much. But if I had to pick a team that could make a run in the playoffs that I thought was sort of interesting, I thought this Eagles team was the team that could do that. I'm just sort of looking at where these teams are at today, at this stage of the season. And while the Eagles won last week, a moral victory in a loss was certainly taken by Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions in that game. I mean, you can only have some moral victories, Dan Campbell, before you're an assistant coach someplace else before you know it. But I sort of look at this and I think this Viking offense is going to get really back on track for the majority of this football game, assuming there are no weather issues in this game. I like the Vikings defense. I think they're going to be able to slow down the running game enough and key in on Jalen Hurts just enough to pull this off. And I'm picking them to actually win it. So I've got the Vikes in this one.
Yeah, I remember last week we talked about not wanting to look like a homer and taking the Vikings, but you and I both did it because we thought that they would actually win the game, and we were right. I think you look like a homer this week in taking the Vikings. Let's not forget. In the last 5 years, Vikings have been one of the worst primetime teams in the league. They can't win it. And now, hey, look, it's a different regime, it's a different organization, different coach, all that kind of stuff. I get it. And we're going to find out a lot about the Vikings this week. I don't think last week was a real good litmus test as to where this team is. I think the Eagles have got a really good offense. I still think the Vikings are a few pieces away, or at least a few games or experience away from gelling and being a great defense. I don't think that was, again, that showing against the Packers, I think, was more of a mirage than anything. It was more about the Packers just being terrible. I'm going to take the Eagles in the 1.5. I just think the Eagles are going to win the game. I think it'll be a tight game. I think it'll be a good game. I think it's two really good teams that could go a long ways in the playoffs. I just need to see the Vikings win a primetime game before I'm going to pick them on one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, that's why I was going to wear my hat backwards at least, so I didn't look like too much of a homer this week. It just I'm more about the Viking defense right now. And until they start sort of heading back. Like, I think there's this grace period in the first 4 weeks of the season where they're going to be able to do some things they haven't done before and get away with it on the defensive side of the ball. So I really believe they're going to be able to slow down the Eagles enough to win this game. So my bet is less about the whole Kirk Cousins can't play well on nationally televised games. This is more about, hey, I'm talking defense right now more than anything. And one last quick thought on the Vikings and the Packers from last week. I found it odd because usually like the Viking home game is almost a Packer home game. And it didn't seem like the Packer fans traveled as much as they usually do across the border.
They didn't want to see Sammy Watkins? Huh?
They did not want to see Sammy Watkins. I think that was it. That was it.
I didn't want to see Sammy Watkins.
Who wants to see Sammy Watkins? Nobody wants to see Sammy Watkins. All right. So there you have it. Those are our top 10 games for week number 2 of your National Football League schedule. As we like to say, we hope these are worth spending some money on. That's why we put them together. Brad, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I would expect to see some of the kinks get worked out this week in week 2. Something that looks a little bit more like football. I think if you're the Chargers, you're really concerned about the Justin Herbert injury last week. We can get into that more next week as we find out a little bit more about if he's going to be available. But sloppy football as we predicted in week 1. Hopefully it gets better in week 2.
Yeah, definitely some sloppy football out there in week 1, and I think we'll see some significant improvements sort of across the board. All right, for the Gods of Odds, that is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBopp in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.